Two gas company servicemen were out working one day. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and people were out watering their lawns. They parked their truck at one end of a long walk and walked down the street, checking gas meters. When they got done, one of them turned to the other and said, "I bet I can beat you back to the truck." And they started running. They raced down the street. When they finally got back to their truck and turned around, they found a dozen people running right behind them, huffing and puffing. "Why are you running?" they asked them. Finally, one of them sheepishly replied, "Well, when you see two gas company employees running as fast as they can down the street, you know that you had better run too." There are actually a lot of good reasons why people take up running as a pastime. Many say that it is for the health benefits, but then they admit that a lot of it has to do with how they feel when they are running. "Running is the only time that I disconnect," one person said. "For a while at least, they are no longer looking at their phone or wondering why it just went beep." "Running is my therapist," said another. "It allows me to voice all my insecurities and fears, and then tells me to let go of them." "Running is when I most feel aware of my physical body," said another. "I am feeling air on my skin, my breath going in and out of my lungs, my muscles contracting, my heart beating in my chest. It is when I am most aware that, yes, today I am alive." In the Gospel of John, there is an account of Peter and John running to the tomb of Jesus on that first Easter morning. Their race began when Mary came bursting in and told them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." He herself had run all the way there. She had no good news to share, only bad news. I can't help wondering then why she felt such an urgency to reach out to them. Maybe it was just because she was still hurting inside. She had gone to the grave of Jesus because she needed to be there, she needed to grieve, and she needed to feel close to him. I think that she had hoped to find some relief in tears and in her memories. Many of us have been there and have felt that way. Luke's gospel says that she and the other women had come to anoint his body with spices, the customary funeral rite, which they had not had time to do before the tomb was sealed. In John's gospel, however, Mary was alone when she got there. She saw that the stone which had sealed the entrance had been rolled away. She concluded almost immediately that the body must have been stolen. What else could have happened? And so what little comfort she hoped to find in grieving was now gone. Therefore, she ran to those who could share her pain at this news. Peter and the other disciple immediately set out for the tomb. The other disciple has always been assumed to be John. Most scholars believe that this was really a sort of humble acknowledgement that he is presenting a first-person account of that day, albeit probably written down much later. Peter and John soon started running. What did they hope to achieve, I wonder, by getting there so fast? I'm not sure, but I suspect that each of them were running toward the grave for their own reason. One was running away from something, the other was running toward something. Peter was a mess. When push had come to shove, he had failed to be the leader. Oh, he had tried. He was willing to fight that night in the garden, but Jesus stopped him. He followed the guard to the temple, hoping to be able to do something there. But when asked whether he knew Jesus, he was afraid and denied that he had ever been a disciple of this man. Peter had once boldly promised that he would never let Jesus die, or else he would die with him. But in the end, Peter could do neither. Peter wasn't the man that he thought he was. He was a failure. I think that when he started running toward that tomb, he was running away from himself and away from the pain. It probably felt good to be running. While he was running, it didn't matter what happened next. Like many guys I know, he preferred to be doing something instead of thinking. Running was better than constantly reliving the failure he had become. That may be a good reason to run. Because while you are running, you at least aren't where you were, or even who you were. You are just yourself in motion. Metaphorically speaking, all of us have on occasion, probably tried at least, to run away from our problems. But when the problem is actually who we are, it becomes really hard to outrun it. The harder we run, the closer we will get to ourselves. That is where I think Peter was that morning. He was still trying to process it all. He knew too much about himself now. He wanted to run away from that and from the failure he had now become. On a TV show I was watching recently, one of the characters remarked, "There is a problem with trying to understand every mistake you have ever made. You can't. And trying robs you of your life, your plans, your future. Plus, you can't really learn from your mistakes if you stop moving forward." In a way, you could say that Peter was running, but he wasn't really moving forward. John, on the other hand, was running for a different reason. He had been there at the foot of the cross when Jesus died. He knew that Jesus was gone, and yet he had no idea what an empty tomb might mean. I think he was driven by love to believe that somehow there could be more to this story of Jesus. He was running towards something, toward a future that he could not even imagine yet. That is the other good reason to run. Not to leave the past behind, but to discover what lies ahead. The pessimist lives with the burden of what never was. The optimist believes in what has yet to be. One of them runs trying to leave the past behind. The other runs toward the future and believes that somehow it will be better than the past. I believe that the most important line in this whole passage of Scripture is the one that says, "The two were running together." Shame and hope, side by side. Well, each of them may have been driven by something different. That morning, they were running together. That is us. That is the church. That is community. Which is also another reason why some people say they like to run. Running brings me community and awareness, someone once said. It has connected me with so many other runners, both in person, through running groups, and online. It has made me aware of the many charities that people run for, the causes that are close to their hearts, and drive them towards pushing through mile after mile when it gets tough. I'm not sure that you have to run to accomplish that, but you do have to be alive, and you have to know who you are, warts and all, and you have to care. You can start out running away, but sooner or later, you must end up alongside of someone who is running towards something that will make your life worth living, if only so that you can see what tomorrow brings. It was a fellow named Abraham Miller who said that a man begins to die when he ceases to expect anything from tomorrow. Peter had already begun to die inside. John, however, still had hope. Not the Pollyanna sort of hope that everything will turn out well, but the kind of hope that believes that regardless of how it turns out, in the end, life will still make sense. Or if you prefer, you might want to think of hope like Emily Dickinson did. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. The Bible says that John got there first. Hope always does. He looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, still a mystery to be solved. If someone stole the body, then why leave the linen lying there still in place? Then Peter arrived and barged right in, of course, like he always does. He saw exactly the same thing, but he had no way to make any sense out of what his eyes were seeing. John followed him in, and in his own words, he saw and believed. That is because it didn't need to make sense to him. It just was. It was somehow a promise that the future was going to be okay. Without understanding why that could be so, John had already found his way to where he needed to be. His faith and hope were enough to make life worth living still. The question for us this morning is whether that can be enough for us too. Why are we running? And where do we need to be? Are we trying to get somewhere, or are we just trying to get away from where we have been? It's been a tough year, and maybe for some of us, a tough life. But we are still here, and I believe that is because the race isn't over for us yet. Maybe all we have to do is keep running until we can find the faith and hope that all of us need to make life worth living. After Peter and John left, Mary returned to the tomb, and this time Jesus was there too. Her journey had brought them face to face again. And while it didn't answer all her questions in life, it did erase her sorrow and fill her with joy. She became the first to share the good news. He is risen. Maybe that is what it feels like to run the race to the finish line. Full disclosure, I'm not really a runner. As Milton Berle once said, my doctor told me that running could add years to my life. I think he was right. Every time I try running, I feel 10 years older. I am sure that running is probably more fun than I think it is, if you do it more often. I haven't really tried. As a metaphor for life, however, I can still appreciate it. Like running, our happiness in life depends upon the reason why we are living. When asked once about how to be happy in life, Groucho Marx said, I, not events, have the power to make me happy or unhappy today. I can choose which it shall be. Yesterday is dead. Tomorrow hasn't arrived yet. I have just one day today, and I am going to be happy in it. All of us are running the same race, one way or another, and we get to decide why. Why not make it a journey toward something? Why not strive to live a life worth living, toward a life of faith and hope? If you do that, Jesus will be there, running by your side. Be safe, and God bless you.